Capes and conundrums. Robin observes Councilwoman Knox go over the paperwork and he considers her. She is a woman who's quick to fluster and panic, but when given time to think, she quickly figures things out. The flapping counselor, that's her nickname, and for good reason. But when she's not surprised or flustered, she's very dedicated to her job. She has a respectable work ethic in that she considers all her time on the clock as something important. If she's not working, then she's stealing from Skathak and its people, and she loathes being a thief. There could be an argument here that we may be training an army with this. She notes as she considers the technical details and propositions for the different forms of the tests. We're technically an oversized and self-sustaining hunting outpost, not a proper city. We can only have so many armed forces in order to fend off pirates and raiders. If this is considered military training, then we will easily go over the maximum 2% of the population. The problem is that if someone's looking to paint these events as some kind of military training, there's little to no way to convince them otherwise. If this was some kind of basket weaving or interpretive dance club, they could still find some way they could make it look like a military exercise. Robin says, and Councilwoman Knox can't help but smile. Oh? While I fully agree, I would love to hear how basket weaving and interpretive dance can have military applications. Camouflage to disguise weapons, well-woven fibers or branches can be used for a primitive shield, and any form of physical activity, such as dance, can easily be used to train a soldier to physical fitness. A well-trained martial artist is often described as having a dancer's grace. Robin explains, and Councilwoman Knox lets out a huff of amusement. Then, in that case, do I have a... what's that combatant role called again? Ah, yes. Do I have a sniper's focus? I'd put you behind a heavy weapon, actually. You strike me as the itchy trigger finger type, and those kind of people are best for watching a hostile choke point. Robin remarks, tactfully not telling her that her tendency to panic and fluster was the sort of thing that would disqualify them from serving if she couldn't overcome it. Not everyone is meant for combat, and that's a good thing. Logistics is just as, if not more, important than soldiers on the field. Really? The more you know, Councilwoman Knox says, and Robin shrugs. Honestly, if you were in an army, you'd be best in an administrative role. Everyone has skills, and everyone's skills are needed, but the skills for the battlefield are not for everyone, Robin says. You're fine off the battlefield. Yes, but that's because I don't get bored easily and have a mind for detail. This makes me an exceptional guard and a fairly decent lawyer. Robin explains, and she nods. I see. So, where do we want this to end up as? If we just go ahead as a military force, then we can prepare for possible complaints or issues, but... Councilwoman Knox considers before she bites at the stylus in her mouth. The woman's a fruit seigneur, so her instinct to bite on things is interesting. Perhaps her father is a blood seigneur and she has the instinct. Or we can emphasize over and over that this does not legally count as any form of military training, police training, or investigative training. Legally that works, but legal concerns and optic concerns are two separate issues entirely. You can be undergoing entirely legal affairs and still wind up explaining yourself to the police if you look sufficiently criminal while doing it. True. So how do we minimize that? Well, if you can communicate with my office while planning your events and affairs a little more, then we can release the information as a form of public awareness, especially if we push to advertise this to tourists more. Make it as much of the Skathak experience as lava serpent hunting. Knox states as she considers the data slate further. Well, we could slot it officially under a public wellness program. Encourage a more active lifestyle and the puzzle aspects of things in order to increase cognition. If you can sell it like that to people, then it's downright responsible to have these games going on, Robin says, and something behind Ambassador Knox's eyes light up. Yes, especially if we integrate a program similar to a specialized diet or have it so that local programs of education and other physical conditioning can speak with your organizers and have passing their courses as a qualifier for certain levels of your testing, Councilwoman Knox says, and Robin nods. Doable, but we're still going to have some prizes as added incentive in order to have both our leveled tests and the qualifying accreditation. Perhaps some special prize beyond that in order to encourage both. Considering how most people hate paperwork, it could be as simple as a special badge where you don't need to fill things out and are considered fully accredited to be on all event areas of a certain area and lower, Councilwoman Knox says. Of course, that means more for us up front and a little more from them up front, but it could allow a lot of local women to simply walk on, or for a visitor who's already got a great deal of legal training to blitz through the tests and go through event after event. Strong and eager hunters are often very competent in both logical deduction and physical affairs. True enough, I can't see Agent Herbert or Grand Huntsmistress Isma failing any of our tests outside of doing it deliberately for amusement or being massively intoxicated. Isn't Herbert that young human that came through here with Huntsmistress Isma? She's his, I think, great-great-grandmother-in-law? I'm not certain. I do know that we were made aware of Scathach and its current love of Batman from his little tour with her. He did an amazing deathstroke, Councilwoman Knox says in a fond tone. Oh, so mine doesn't compare, Robin asks in a clearly faux-offended voice, and she gets very flustered for a moment but manages to catch herself before she can say anything and considers before giving him a reproving look that he smirks at. That was mean, she chides him. Sorry, ma'am. He replies as he grabs the pitcher of water on the table and pours himself a glass. It's very hard to be angry at a man, let alone a man I know is so young. It's like scolding a precocious child. She notes and he rolls his eyes somewhat. Still, we live and die on our vacationers. Scathach is an extremely fertile and productive world, but the sheer tectonic force on it makes mining, farming, and ranching here much more dangerous and far too costly to actually compete with other galactic companies. We need the lava serpents, and we can't risk our classification as a hunting outpost, or too many bad reviews of one. Vacation destinations live and die off their reputations. I understand and respect that, which is why we're having this meeting, Robin says easily. Good. Now we need to speak about the rental of the properties when it comes to the different areas for the events in questions, and several hours later Robin's shift has ended and he has more meeting with Councilwoman Knox tomorrow. His fellow lawyers and legal professionals / soldiers / drinking buddies, fellow pranksters are going to give everything a good once over, and for the 2 hours before he meets with Knox, he's going to go over all the little notes they're going to make, and he's going to use that time to question them about anything that confuses him. But until then, he has time to eat, sleep, get the kinks out of his system, and generally just have some fun and unwind. So he climbs to stand on top of the blimp, activates a little app on his phone as he calculates his position in the city, takes a sprinter's position, and takes off at a dead run to the edge. He jumps and the wind is already howling in his ears as he lets out a whoop of excitement. He drops 5 stories before he grabs the flapping ends of his jacket and uses a bit of axiom to control his fall and aims to a large ledge on a skyscraper. He gets the right angle and lets go of the jacket to throw his hand forward and turn his diving head first into a building into a rolling landing that he turns into a sprint. He jumps over a sonar that walks out of a window and keeps going. Pardon me, he calls back to her and keeps making a beeline for the edge of the building, and he jumps again as he reaches it. His jump is powerful and takes him half a city block's distance to the platform, a level down at the next one. The building design ends with only the corner of the building having the slight platform, and he slips off and runs along the side of the building before letting himself drop a bit. A power cable breaks his fall next, and he swings off it and spins through the air like a trapeze artist before coming up to the side of the building again and then jumping off to redirect his momentum again. And he finally reaches ground level as he dives onto the sidewalk and rolls to bleed off the momentum. 400 stories crossed, and he waits for a few seconds and his motorcycle rolls up to him on its auto driver. He chuckles as he mounts his bike and he picks up the crown helmet affair that latches onto his forehead and projects a protective hard light field around his head that's only visible in the ultraviolet spectrum, and therefore is effectively an invisible helmet for him. Even better, it can have holes in it to let the wind toss his hair around without compromising the strength or protective abilities of the helmet. A few revs of the engine. He had modified the bike so that the engine would actually roar rather than silently hum, and he takes off. The feel of the engine under him, the wind pulling at his clothing and hair as he zooms through the city. His stress starts to melt away, and he can't help but let out a long, soothing, and comfortable sigh. The traffic in the city itself is very sparse. Having a majority flying population means ground level is basically for the very cheap deliveries and guests that don't have or like the near omnipresent flying vehicles. There are expansion zones around the city, and the terrain around there is rougher and harder on the bike. But that also means that there are some places he can take some jumps. It's just going to take a bit to get there, and he pumps the brakes when he realizes he just passed by Santiago and the three girls and slows down so he can turn entirely and heads back towards the theater the four are hanging out in front of. "I thought that was you. Just left your shift, Robin?" Santiago asks as Robin drives up. "Yep, long one trying to work more things out about the events. On your second date?" Robin asks. Yes, I am. "You're going to the ash dunes outside the city, aren't you?" Santiago asks. "You need dirt for dirt biking." Robin agrees before looking over things. So apparently more than half the men on our blimp just jump off the damn thing like you and me. What does that say about us?" Robin asks in an amused tone, and Santiago chuckles. "Hopefully something good. But in all likelihood, it means we're all bunch of adrenaline-hungry loonies," Santiago says. "Hey, nothing wrong with that. It normally takes a lot more axiom to fly the ways you guys can, that or a vehicle. But you keep up when we're on the wing," Darkscream says, and Santiago considers. "Right, well, don't let me get in the way. I got some ash dunes to leave tread marks in, and you've got a... What's playing at this theater anyways? I don't see any posters from this angle," Robin says as he starts to turn his bike around. "Hunt Falls. This season's collection of massive hunting fails," Ambush Knight says, and Robin nods. "That sounds like fun. Don't do anything that I wouldn't do," Robin says cheerfully as he revs his engine. "And that stops me from doing what exactly?" Santiago asks. "Getting caught," Robin replies before driving off with a laugh.